Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise, give you those insights you really need. You ever stop and think about the bits and pieces, the unseen components that keep our industrial world, ticking along safely? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of those, the rotary isolator. Maybe not something you handle every day, but it's absolutely fundamental.
It really is. Think of it as like the ultimate manual kill switch for heavy machinery, for electrical systems. It completely cuts the power. Essential for maintenance safety, preventing accidental starts. Just basic, critical workplace safety.
Right. And while it sounds specific, looking at its market actually tells us a lot about economic trends, regional shifts, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And the sources we're looking at today give us a pretty detailed picture. We've got data from 2021, forecasts up to 2025, and even projections out to 2033. So we're going to break down these revenue numbers, the growth rates, and really give you a clear sense of what's happening.
Okay, sounds good. Let's unpack this then. Let's see who's leading the charge in this surprisingly big market. So let's start with the big picture, the global market for these rotary isolators. It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
It really is. Back in 2021, we're talking just over $1 billion, $1.07 billion roughly.
Okay, and growing.
Oh, yeah. Projected to hit, $1.35 billion by 2025. And then quite a leap by 2033, looking at over $2.16 billion.
Wow, that's, what does that work out to? A compound annual growth rate, a CAGR.
Yep, a solid 6% CAGR over that whole period. And what's interesting there, I think, is just how consistent that upward trend is globally.
Right.
It really points to a strong, maybe even growing global demand for this kind of industrial safety.
Driven by what? Regulations, new factories?
Probably both. Stricter safety rules seem likely, plus just, ongoing industrial build-out globally. Infrastructure, manufacturing, energy grids. They all need this stuff.
Okay, so a strong global picture, but let's zoom in a bit. North America, how does it stack up?
North America. Well, it was the leader back in 2021. Pulled in revenue of about $332.8 million.
So a big chunk of the global market then.
Definitely. And it's expected to grow pretty steadily, too, looking at about $416 million by 2025, and then projected $656.7 million roughly by 2033.
Okay, and the growth rate there, still strong.
Yeah, pretty strong. The CAGR is just under 6%, 5.87% to be exact for North America.
And within North America, I assume the U.S. is the main driver.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. market was already almost $260 million in 2021. That's projected to grow past $323 million by 2025 and then hit almost $509 million by 2033. So, yeah, the bulk of it is the U.S.
Right. What about Canada and Mexico? Are they significant too?
They are. Canada started at nearly $46 million in 2021, expected to reach over $93 million by 2033. And Mexico started around $27 million, and it's projected to get to about $54.5 million. So, solid growth across the board there.
Okay, so North America, led by the U.S., a really strong base. Let's cross the Atlantic. What's the story in Europe?
Right, Europe. A different kind of market, maybe more mature industrially, but still showing pretty solid numbers.
Okay. What are we looking at overall?
For Europe, the total valuation in 2021 was around $252 million. That's expected to climb to over $314 million by 2025 and reach nearly $495 million by 2033.
And the growth rate? Similar to North America.
Very similar, actually. The CAGR is 5.83%, so almost identical to North America's.
Interesting. So even in a mature industrial region, the demand is still growing steadily.
Exactly. And you see that reflected in the key countries. Germany, for example.
Yeah.
Big manufacturing base. They were at about $46 million in 2021, projected to grow to over $87 million by 2033.
Okay. And France?
France also showing strong growth. Started near $33 million, expected to more than double to over $66 million by 2033. The UK is significant too, going from about $31.5 million up to nearly $65 million in that same time frame.
So the big three, Germany, France, UK, are all performing well. What about other significant players? Italy? Spain?
Yep, they're important contributors. Italy is projected to grow from around $21.7 million to over $40.5 million. Russia, interestingly, starts quite high, near $29 million, and is expected to reach over $55 million.
Okay.
And Spain, similar trajectory to Italy, moving from about $20.7 million towards $42.5 million by 2033.
Right, so broad strength across the continent.
Yes, and actually, one of the really interesting things in Europe is the growth in some of the, you might say, smaller
Oh,
markets.
yeah? Like where?
Well, look at Sweden. It's projected to go from under $6 million in 2021 to over $12 million by 2033. More than doubling. Denmark, similar story from about $5.3 million to over $11 million. Switzerland, too, $5 million up to nearly $12 million.
Huh. So pretty dynamic growth even in those economies.
Exactly. It contrasts a bit with, say, Luxembourg, which shows more modest growth, though still positive, from $3.3 million to about $5.4 million.
And then there's the rest of Europe category, I suppose.
Right, that collective group. That was already worth about $51 million in 2021, and it's projected to grow to almost $97 million by 2033. So substantial growth there, too.
Okay, so Europe's solid, steady. But you mentioned earlier, if we're looking for where things are really heating up.
Ah, yes. Then you have to look at Asia Pacific. That's the real powerhouse in this market.
Right. Give us the number. How big is it?
In 2021, Asia Pacific was already close to $400 million, $399.35 million to be precise. By 2025, it's forecast to hit over $512 million. And by 2033, a massive $829.5 million.
Wow. Okay. That's huge growth. What's the CAGR there? It must be higher.
It is. It's the highest of any region we've looked at, 6.2 over 9%, so clearly outpacing the others.
So why? What's driving that incredible growth in Asia Pacific?
Well, it's really a story of massive industrialization, isn't it? Huge infrastructure projects, manufacturing booming, increasing automation, and China is just, leading the charge, unquestionably.
What are China's numbers?
China alone was almost $161 million back in 2021. That's projected to grow to over $207 million by 2025 and then soar to over $337 million by 2033.
Just staggering. So China's the biggest piece, but who else is contributing significantly in APAC?
Japan is a very strong number, too. About $67 million in 2021, expected to reach over $134 million by 2033, so doubling as well.
Okay. And India, we hear so much about growth there.
India is definitely one to watch, shows a really rapid rise. From about $39.5 million in 2021, it's projected to hit over $87 million by 2033. That's well over double, a huge increase.
Yeah, that really underscores the pace of development there.
Absolutely. And then you've got South Korea, also very significant, expected to grow from about $55 million to over $110 million. Australia, more mature perhaps, but still robust growth, projected to go from nearly $29 million to over $63 million.
Okay. Any other notable markets in Asia Pacific?
Yeah, there are several smaller but still vital ones. Singapore, for instance, growing from about $5.6 million towards $8.3 million. Southeast Asia as a collective region shows strong growth, too, more than doubling from $17 million to over $37 million.
Okay.
And Taiwan projected to grow from about $9 million to nearly $21 million. And then there's the rest of APAC, adding another $30 million or so by 2033.
So Asia Pacific is clearly the high growth story here.
Without a doubt, driven by that intense industrial activity.
Okay, let's round out the picture. What about South America, the Middle East, and Africa? How do they fit in?
Right. These regions have their own trajectories, definitely smaller markets overall, but showing important growth patterns.
Let's start with South America. What are the numbers there?
South America was valued at nearly $40 million, $39.7 million. In 2021, it's projected to grow to almost $53 million by 2025, and then reach nearly $89 million by 2033. So again, more than doubling over the period.
And who's leading in South America? Brazil, I imagine.
Yes, Brazil's the largest market there, expected to grow from roughly $17 million to over $38.5 million by 2033. Argentina is also significant, projected to go from about $6.9 million to nearly $15 million.
Okay. Anyone else showing notable growth?
Yeah, Colombia is on a strong upward path, projected to go from $3.3 million to over $7.7 million. Peru and Chile also showing good growth, both expected to reach between $6 million and $7 million by 2033. So broadening industrial safety adoption there.
Right. Okay, let's shift to the Middle East.
The Middle East market was around $36.5 million in 2021, forecasted to reach about $44.7 million in 2025, and then climb to over $69 million by 2033.
And within the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, a key player.
Definitely. Saudi Arabia is projected to account for nearly $30 million of that 2033 total, up from about $15.7 million in 2021.
Good about Turkey or the UAE?
Turkey shows good growth, expected to more than double from $2.7 million to nearly $5.5 million. The UAE also expanding steadily from about $6.5 million towards $12.6 million by 2033.
Any others to mention in the Middle East?
Egypt and Qatar show consistent, if smaller, growth, reflecting their own development projects. Egypt heading towards $5.5 million, Qatar towards $6.6 million, and the rest of the Middle East adds another roughly $9.4 million by 2033.
Okay, got it. And finally, Africa. How does that region look?
Africa represents the smallest regional market in our data, but it is growing steadily. Started at about $12.9 million in 2021, projected to hit nearly $15 million by 2025, and reach about $21.6 million by 2033.
And which countries are most significant there?
The main ones highlighted are Nigeria, expected to grow from $2.2 million to nearly $3.9 million, and South Africa, which is a larger market, projected to increase from about $4.5 million to nearly $7.4 million by 2033.
Okay, so we've really covered the globe there. It's quite a detailed picture. So stepping back, what's the main takeaway here? We've seen North America leading, Europe steady, Asia Pacific just booming. It really shows how this seemingly niche component, the rotary isolator, is actually tied into massive global industrial trends, right?
Absolutely. And I think for you, listening and trying to understand these market dynamics, it's a great example of how fundamental safety requirements underpin so much economic activity. It's not just about the flashy tech, it's about these foundational safety components that allow industry to function and grow. It reflects investment, regulation, modernization, all those big themes.
Yeah, that's a great point. So maybe next time you hear about, I don't know, a new manufacturing plant opening or a big infrastructure project, you can think about these kinds of unsung heroes, like the rotary isolators, that are essential to making it happen safely. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden components, what other niche markets out there are silently driving huge economic shifts that we just don't normally talk about? Something to think about. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive today.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something you probably don't think about much, but it's absolutely vital. We're talking about rotary isolators, the market dynamics specifically. Our mission, as always, is to dive into the sources, especially this really comprehensive analysis from cognitive market research, and just pull out the key stuff, give you that shortcut, so you're up to speed on these surprisingly important little components.
Yeah, they really are important. And basically, rotary isolators, they're like these silent guardians of electrical safety. Their job is pretty simple, really. They safely disconnect circuits, cut the power completely. Think about maintenance or an emergency. These are the things that make it safe to actually work on electrical systems. They're kind of the unsung heroes.
Yeah.
Foundational stuff.
Unsung heroes, I like that. And yeah, because they're so key for safety, it makes sense the market's actually, it's growing quite a bit. So let's unpack that. What's really pushing this market? What are the big drivers behind this expansion right now?
Okay, well, the first really big one is this huge wave of industrial automation and just infrastructure development globally. As industries modernize, bring in more robots, more automated lines, these isolators become absolutely critical. You need them for safe disconnection when you do maintenance, or heaven forbid during an emergency, or just repairs. We see huge demand in places like construction, manufacturing, definitely oil and gas, and power generation too. It's interesting actually how widespread they are. Even a smaller factory might have like dozens scattered around keeping things safe.
That makes total sense. More machines, more complexity, more need for that safety cutoff. But it's not just about more factories being built, right? What else is adding fuel to this fire?
Well, another really compelling factor is the increasing focus on electrical safety rules. Regulations. You've got these international and regional standards, think IEC, NEC, OSHA. They're sort of the global safety police for electricity. And they're getting stricter. And rotary isolators. They're key players in cutting down dangers like arc flashes. Those are really nasty electrical explosions and just electric shock, especially with high voltage. So what's fascinating here is how that regulatory pressure, it translates directly into market demand. You need these things to comply.
Okay, and here's something I find really interesting, especially thinking about the future of energy. The boom in renewable energy installations. That's a massive factor too.
Oh, absolutely massive.
Rotary isolators are essential for disconnecting solar panel systems, wind turbines, when they need checking or fixing. You imagine a huge solar farm, right? It's not just one switch. You could have hundreds, maybe thousands of these little isolators, each one acting as a safety point for workers and the equipment itself, spread across, acres of panels or those giant wind parks.
Exactly right. And that ties into the last big driver, which is the growing need for super reliable power distribution. Think about mission-critical places, airports, hospitals, data centers, places where the power absolutely cannot go out. Rotary isolators are indispensable there because they're tough, they can handle switching under load, and they just perform reliably. It's that
Right.
sort of unseen reliability they provide, the stuff that just keeps our daily lives running smoothly behind the scenes,
Hmm.
like making sure your flight data is there or hospital machines keep running.
Right. So strong growth, clear drivers, but no market grows without hitting a few bumps in the road. What about the challenges, the constraints? What could potentially slow this market down a bit?
Yeah, good question. The main hurdle that comes up in the research is cost, installation and maintenance costs. This is especially true for the really specialized ones, the kind you need in, say, really harsh environments,
Yeah.
like deep mines or offshore oil rigs. Those units have to be super tough, corrosion resistant, explosion proof, handle extreme temperatures,
Yeah.
and that makes them expensive. So it raises this tricky question for businesses. Okay, how much do we spend on this top level protection? At what point does it become, maybe too costly for the budget, even if it's really needed? It's a balancing act.
Hmm. Cost is always a factor. And I guess with technology moving so fast, are there alternatives popping up? Like other ways to switch circuits?
Yeah, that's another constraint. You are seeing the rise of alternative switching technologies,
Mm.
things like automated circuit interrupters, digital breakers, sometimes with remote control features. In really high-tech advanced setups, maybe in like a brand new smart factory,
Mhm.
these could potentially reduce the need for a traditional manual rotary isolator, though often they serve slightly different purposes or work alongside them.
Okay, so new tech alternatives. What about older places? Is it easy to add these isolators to existing setups?
Ah, well, that's another headache. Retrofitting. Putting these into older electrical systems, it can be really complicated
Hmm.
and expensive. Often it means big upgrades, maybe even completely rewiring sections. And, understandably, that can put people off, especially in older buildings or factories where the budget for infrastructure upgrades might be tight.
Right, the hassle factor. And is everyone even aware of how important these are? Especially globally.
That's the last key barrier mentioned. Limited awareness, particularly in some developing regions. You might have smaller companies or maybe more informal industrial operations that just aren't as familiar with the latest electrical safety standards or even what an isolator does exactly. So naturally, they might not prioritize putting them in. It's often a knowledge gap that affects safety and adoption rates.
Okay, so challenges are definitely there. Cost, alternatives, retrofitting issues, awareness gaps. But despite all that, it sounds like the world of rotary isolators isn't exactly, standing still. Things are happening. What are some of the cool trends, the innovations shaping how these components are evolving?
Oh, definitely not standing still. Um, One really prominent trend is the constant improvement in designs for harsh environments, explosion-proof, weather-proof. There's just this growing demand for isolators that can work safely and reliably in really hazardous places, chemical plants, outdoor sites, you name it. So manufacturers are pushing hard, developing units with high IP ratings like IP66, IP67. That means they're super sealed against dust, water jets, even being submerged for a bit. They're using really tough materials, stainless steel, strong polycarbonates. It's fascinating how they're making safety even safer, pushing the boundaries for extreme conditions.
Making safety safer. I like that. And we're seeing them pop up in more places too, right? Like in buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. Another rising trend is how they're being integrated into HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and just general building automation. You see them used for motor control, switching power to big rooftop AC units, providing those critical safety disconnects right where they're needed in modern commercial buildings. They're sort of becoming part of the building's own nervous system, ensuring things run safely and efficiently.
If we connect that to the bigger picture, the whole smart world, are they getting smarter too?
They are. That's a definite move towards more intelligent control. Modern rotary isolators aren't just simple on-off switches anymore. They're incorporating features like auxiliary contacts, which can send signals, and interlocks, which prevent unsafe operations. This makes them compatible with IoT Internet of Things platforms and SCADA systems, those big control networks for industry and power grids. It fits perfectly with Industry 4.0, smart factories, smart grids. The simple switch is becoming a connected, sometimes even data-providing device.
So they're becoming part of that connected infrastructure. And what about physically? Are they changing shape or size?
Yes, that's the final trend worth noting. Increasing interest in compact modular designs. Space is often tight in electrical panels and control boxes, right? So manufacturers are responding, making smaller, more space-efficient isolators, and offering easy mounting options like DAN rail mounting, that's a standard click-on system, or canal mounts, surface mounts. Just more flexibility for designers and installers working in those crowded spaces.
Okay, wow. So that really wraps up our deep dive into this surprisingly dynamic world of rotary isolators. We've covered the growth drivers like automation and renewables, looked at the hurdles like cost and retrofitting, and now these cool trends, smarter, tougher, smaller designs. It's pretty clear this market, while maybe overlooked, is actually full of opportunity and definitely evolving.
Oh, it really is. And maybe a final thought for you to consider. Given how absolutely fundamental these seemingly simple components are for both safety and reliability, especially as our world gets more complex, more automated, how might their continued evolution, these smarter, tougher isolators, how might they quietly reshape the infrastructure of tomorrow? Could they be the key to making the smart grid not just smart, but genuinely robust and resilient?
That's a really compelling question to chew on, making the grid truly robust. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope it's given you some insight and maybe sparked a bit of curiosity.